Welcome to Growthcast, Insights for B2B Leaders, where we uncover the strategies, stories, and solutions driving growth for B2B leaders. I'm your host, Alex, and in each episode, we'll be diving deep with founders and CEOs and industry experts to explore how to scale, innovate, and lead in today's competitive market. So let's get started. Today, we have Rhian Huxtable from Insight 6. Nice to meet you, Ryan.
Lovely to meet you, Alex.
How are you today?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Really good. It's nice and bright. It's not raining, so it's all good.
Yeah, well, that's always a benefit when it's not raining in the UK, isn't it?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Amazing, Brian. So, just in regards to your background for the listeners here, do you mind doing a brief
Of
introduction?
course I can. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So, as you said, Alex, my name is Rhian Huxtable. I am a CX professional. So I'm a CCXP accredited by the CXPA, which is the international recognized regulatory organization that looks after CX professionals across the globe. I also own a business called Devon and Cornwall Customer Insights. So I run a business down in Devon. I am also an Insight 6 director, CX director. So I own the Insight 6 franchise for Devon, Cornwall, and Somerset. And we work with clients from one to two people businesses all the way up to multi-million pound professional service businesses, attractions, local authorities, and so on, helping them really understand how they make the most of their client journey, their visitor journey, their customer journey, to maximize the opportunity that the experience gives them. I've worked in the industry for about 27 years, so I've had my own business for the last eight. Before that, I worked for Boots UK up in Nottingham, and I was the head of retail operations. That was my last job there. Before that, I was known as a head of customer experience out in the field. So I used to run the shops out in the field. So I've been in and around customers all my life, all my working life, and now I help clients do that more locally in businesses that we consult with.
That's amazing. And tell me a bit more about now at Insight 6, what you're currently doing.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think one of the key things that the insights that we do at Insight Six is we have a very structured process that we work through with clients. Customer experience, employee experience, we measure both. Can often be seen as quite fluffy, not always having a particularly strong return on investment for the investment you make in that type of work. And one of the key things we do is we dispel that myth. We dispel the myth of, how important it is to focus on, firstly, your employee experience, checking with your team to make sure that they are in a great place. Because why? Well, those are the people that are actually going to look after your customers, and ultimately your customers are going to look after your revenue. So it absolutely starts with your employees. So um, and we know from all of the research that we gather, we do a lot of white paper writing, that an engaged employee with an engaged customer, a customer who gets a great experience from that engagement and that rapport building, will spend up to 16% more for the same product or service they can get elsewhere. So there is a really, part of what we do at Insight Six is when we start to work with a client, we look at the gap between what the business think they're delivering for customers and what their customers and team actually think. And that identifies what we call a CX gap, customer experience gap. And then we quantify that in terms of what that can mean financially to the organization. Um, Once we've done that, we then work with the organization to evolve, fix, change the particular part of the client journey that might not be working particularly well. Um, Now I guess there are three key things that we are seeing at the moment across lots of businesses. Um, and the best way I can describe it to you, Alex, is that, and I say this to my clients all the time, employee client feedback is there if you have a business, whether you choose to listen to it or not. Um, if you choose to listen to it, you can react to it, you can do something about it, you can engage with your employees, your customers, If it's gone wrong, you can put it right, which creates really great super advocacy for the brand. If you choose to ignore it, that's fine. If you choose to ignore it, that might be your strategy. You know, you may not be interested in what your customers or employees think. Your model may sit around your the way in which you drive product or operational efficiency, but ultimately, you know, that will only get you so far. Um, Successful organizations, and we can name lots of them, have a really clear strategic intent for how they're going to look after their employees and customers. And the way I'd coin that, the way I'd explain that to your listeners is simply this. If you're a business owner, your business will be doing one of three things. It will be delivering a random customer experience, employee experience, an intentional employee or customer experience, or a differentiated employee or customer experience.
Yeah.
So does that make sense, Alex?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Just tie it back to the start where you're mentioning identifying that gap. What's the process you do to identify that gap? Are you interviewing their customers? Are you doing group interviews or case studies? How do you go about that process? Because most businesses, I'm sure, say our customers are very happy, right?
Yeah, that's a really great point. Most businesses, and they're not always wrong, by the way, uh, will if I suppose to put this in a way that is collaborative and adds value, often businesses can be quite assumptive
Yeah.
about what their people and their customers think. And that is because we're human beings, right? We like to listen to what we like to hear,
Yeah.
right? Um, and in reality, uh, that assumptive nature of insight can be your biggest problem in your organization. Okay.
Mm.
Um, so the way in which we create that gap analysis, is we use various different types of insight gathering and measurement to um, bring lightness to the dark of what what a business or or a board or an SLT might think, and the C-suite more generally. Um, and what we do is we've got a six-stage process. The first thing we do is we sit down and we ascertain what the business thinks. So right
Yeah.
off the bat, what do you think? You know, where's your head? And that's always really helpful because that gives us a couple of really key um, opportunities to question, particularly the C-suite at that point. From that, they will have normally a very good idea of what that looks like. So they'll be, that they're in the business every day. They will be talking to the customers themselves, but obviously listening to what they want to hear, and of which, of course, some of that will be correct. Um, so we take all of that down, and we then ask them what is it, strategically they're wanting to deliver with the insight or the piece of work that we're embarking on. And it might be a customer vision, it might be to gain more customers, it might be able to retain the ones they've got, it might be an attraction exercise, it might be a market research exercise for markets they're not currently in. Um, so once we've established that, stage two of our process is all about identifying the current reality. And in
Yeah.
doing that, we tend to interview their biggest clients. We'll survey their team. We'll survey their broader client base. We might carry out some customer panels, employee panels. We'll look at their promises on their website. We'll look at any reviews they've got. So we'll do a whole sweep of data collection to understand current reality. What we then do, Alex, is we get that data back. We compare the different business units within their organization, and that very often shows us really colourful insight of where some teams within the organization really get it, they're on it, they know what their customers want, they've really got their finger on the pulse, as opposed to other areas of the organization where they may not be as focused or engaged in that employee or customer journey. So we provide that granular detail, and then what we do is we benchmark their business against their sector. So we've got a lot of sector detail we then look at and say, for example, in an advocacy score or as known in the industry as net promoter score, we'll give an average, sorry, we'll give a benchmark number against the average number in the sector. That's kind of stage 3 of our process. Stage 4 of our process is then we make recommendations for how they can address, evolve that bit of the journey that might not be delivering for them, where they might be losing clients, where they can gain more clients. And often at that point, I'll work directly with the C-suite to help them implement that in the organization. And then stage 5 is the implementation of that, actually doing the work with the teams, coaching, mentoring. And then we remeasure at stage 6 to check the improvement has been made and that, they're retaining more clients or not losing as many or whatever the original KPI measurement was. So that's how we work with them. That's how we identify the gap. And then most businesses, once they understand the power of that insight and what it can bring, then tend to continue to cyclically work, not always with us, but maybe with another organization to keep their finger on the pulse. The sad reality of this is that, sad, I suppose, is a perception piece from an investment perspective, but businesses that invest consistently in good client outcomes are much more successful than those that don't. And if I take you back before I move on, though, does that kind of answer the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes complete sense. For me, what's most interesting is how do you tackle that gap that you just mentioned in terms of they get a really high ROI if they do focus on this. But me working with businesses, I know this isn't their most top priority, right?
Mm.
How do you guys go from here to here in your sales cycles to really convert them into clients?
Mm. Yeah, another good question. Um, when we start to have a conversation, I'm not avoiding the sales point, by the way. When we start to have a conversation with a client, we're either referred in or they have a strategic pain point they've identified. So actually, that particular point in the sales process, going from suspect to prospect to client, is normally reasonably straightforward for us because businesses that tend to interact with us, you know, are already slightly ahead of the game of their competitors because they understand where this can change, make a difference.
So they're problem aware already.
They're problem aware already. However, some aren't. And some people will bump into us and say, "What do you do?" Either at networking events or hear us speak, and they are curious. We
Yeah.
spark it. We spark the curious bone, as I call it, in their body. And um, we might do some sort of inbound insight to show them what we can do,
Yeah.
um, which helps them become more curious and more of a prospect. Um, but inherently, how we convert them and how they become a sale is principally because the insight demonstrates to them the opportunity for their business. Very often, though, they don't have the expertise in some of the organizations. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, to put the solutions in place. So I'll give you a great example. Often we'll do the gap analysis, which is a kind of a one-off piece of work. Sometimes clients will say to us, "That's great, we'll internalize that, we'll bring that into our own change program." It might be part of a bigger piece of work. Um, the the but at that point, but at that point, um, organizations that don't have that expertise will lean on us to say, "Okay, so what's next? How can you help us? What can we do next?" And often where we will get involved is we will then move to creating a plan for them that is based around our day rate consultancy, where we will work normally on communication of the outputs to the team. A big part of what we do, Alex, is the independent verification of that data. So we're
Yeah.
independently saying, look, this isn't internally what your C-suite are saying. This is what we're saying. So we'll end up communicating. We then end up often doing some client journey mapping to get under the skin of current state journey, future state journey, and then we'll often do some training to support and help that, and then obviously the remeasurement. So once that sales cycle starts at the baseline gap analysis, it tends to roll on.
Yeah.
And we're a relationship business. You know, we want to practice what we preach. We know that businesses that have successful relationships with their organization, with their clients and their customers, whether they're B2C or B2B, um, are are much better at client retention than those that where it's more transactional. And a great example of that is we work with a lot of law firms. Um, Inherently, law firms have a transactional relationship with their clients. You have
Yeah.
a legal need, it's a distressed purchase, you go to a lawyer, you pay their fee, they sort your issue legally out for you. You know, many law firms miss the point that actually the average Brit in their lifetime will need a legal service 7 times.
Yeah.
The latest data we've seen in the B2B, in the B2C world, only 20% of clients will use the same lawyer twice. So there's a huge opportunity, for example, around that longevity piece and creating that rapport and so on, that you know that can work. Um, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. That makes complete sense.
I want to come back, if I may, to
Of course.
organizational um, experiences that are delivered. Because I think if nothing else on today's podcast, what I'd want people to leave with is asking yourself these questions. Is the experience you give your team and your customers random? And what I mean by that is that some days, if you meet the right people in the organization, you get a great experience, right? Because they're engaged, the employees engaged, the client's engaged, everyone's happy. The following day, they might pick up the phone and speak to the grumpy receptionist, for example, and they get an awful experience. And the reason they get an awful experience is because the receptionist isn't getting a great experience at work, and therefore the interaction is not great. And then that damages the client relationship, and therefore the customer doesn't buy. So this random experience is what we call in our industry, this costs you money. Why does it cost you money? Well, it costs you money because you have to go around mopping up the poor experiences. So there's time, labor, energy, often compensation involved in that. And you lose customers. So therefore you have to heavily invest in marketing spend to attract new ones.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have a random experience or you think you have a random experience, we're the people you need to come and speak to because we can help you understand whether it is random or not. Okay. And if it is random, that's fine. That's where you are in the cycle. You then put a plan together strategically within your business plan. You know, and just on that point, I see many businesses that have their business plan, their strategic business plan, and then over here somewhere they've got their customer retention plan or their customer attraction
Yeah.
plan or the marketing plan. I'm like, no, you know, your customer plan should be your strategic plan, right? You
Yeah.
attract your customers, you keep your inbound flow of um, income. So if you have a random experience in your organization, the next part where your direction of travel, so to speak, should be to become an organization that gives an intentional experience. Okay. And what that intentional experience looks like is you are clear, you have processes in place for both your team and your customers that are defined and set down, that everyone in your organization understands. So, you know, and the example I'd give you here is, you know, and they're brilliant at it, uh, Amazon. Okay. We all use Amazon, right? Amazon, you know exactly what you're going to get. It's an intentional experience. You go online, you search your product, you select your product, you pay with your stored card. If you've made a mistake, you can cancel it straight away. Um, you're kept in constant contact either by text or email where your product is. You know what time it's being delivered. You get your product. If it's wrong, it's simple to send back. It's an intentional experience, right?
Yeah.
And even when it goes wrong with Amazon, even when you get the wrong product or you've chosen the wrong product, half the time they'll say to you, "All right, don't worry, just keep it. We'll send you the right one." Why do
Yeah.
they do that? They do that because it costs them more money to send it back, more hassle of double handling it, more hassle of the courier costs, and actually the client goes, wow, I'm getting two products, right?
Yeah, or something.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. It's an awesome experience. It's an intentional experience, right? And they are absolute masters at it. They have looked at their journey, they've looked at their processes, they've looked at the employee engagement, they've looked at the customer engagement, they read the reviews, they know exactly what's happening. That's an intentional experience. Now, when I pose the question to customers, our clients, okay, so you want an intentional experience. It's really simple. That means it's easy to do business with you. Simple as that. How do
Yeah.
you make your business easy to do business with? And if you ask yourself that question, you very quickly get to the point of, well, yeah, we're getting loads of complaints over here in this part of the journey. So that bit clearly is not easy.
Yeah.
So that's the second question we ask at the point where we're trying to move to an intentional experience. When you've delivered an intentional experience, you will be ahead of your competitors because your competitors are still back in this random place of, operational stuff getting in the way. They're not spending and investing time in their team. They're not listening to their customers because they don't have time. They work in a really regulated business and therefore the regulation gets in the way. Well, it doesn't really. Regulation is there to actually support your client outcomes. Making sense so far?
Yeah, no, completely making sense.
Right.
What's interesting to me is what's the one common thing that most businesses are getting wrong from your experience? Is there one common factor that everyone's getting wrong every single time you evaluate, do that gap
Yeah.
analysis?
The one
There's
the
one
one
trend.
yeah, the one common thing most businesses get wrong is or they I don't like using negative language because no business owner intentionally goes out to do a bad job, right?
Of course.
The things that they may that the opportunities that are afforded to them, I use the word opportunity a lot, is they're just not listening to the feedback. They're
Yeah.
not listening to the thousands of consultants that walk through their door. And if you just ask them, they'll tell you what's wrong, both their team and their customers. They're the best consultants. I work with lots of brilliant businesses, and I'm very fortunate to do so. Um, and I'll say to them, look, my job in this relationship is to get you to listen to a different type of consultant, not me.
Yeah.
The thousands of people that shop in your brand every day, every week, every month. And if I'm doing my job right, I should be doing myself out of a job at some point in the future. What I mean by that is that actually we then moving from random experiences to intentional experiences. And businesses that really get this right, there's a third stage, give a differentiated experience. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you get to intentional, you become profitable. Okay. You stop the customer journey stops costing you money. When you get to differentiated, this is where the customer journey starts to massively make you profit. Okay. Because the differentiated experience is one by which the business um, tries to surprise and delight their client base and their team. So these are employers of choice. People want to work for them because they get a great experience. Employers of choice historically deliver differentiated client experiences because they invest in their teams. And the types of businesses, I'll give you a great example. Ritz-Carlton
Yeah.
is, you heard of Ritz-Carlton? Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Stayed there?
Not yet. Not yet. It's on the agenda.
So it's on the agenda. I've never stayed in a Ritz-Carlton, sadly. If they're listening, I'm always happy to come and do some customer experience work with you to experience what it feels like at Ritz-Carlton. The Ritz-Carlton are world renowned for the experience they give their clients. And there's a number of stories I relay about Ritz-Carlton, but probably a quick anecdote would be that um, a businessman who um, use Ritz-Carlton regularly. Was staying in was staying in one of their hotels in the States. And he was asked what type of beverages, alcoholic and non-alcoholic, he would like in his minibar. And he thought, that's an odd question, but anyway, filled it out and put, the type of bourbon he liked and type of mixers he liked and the type of beer he liked. And then lo and behold, when he got there, they welcomed him. When he got to the room, superb welcome, asked him what he was going to do, where he was going to go, whilst he was staying in, I think he was staying in Florida. And long story short, had a great time. He went to the minibar. Everything he'd asked for was in the minibar, and it was all complimentary. When he next stayed in his next Ritz-Carlton, he got to the minibar in New York, and what do you think was in it?
Same thing.
Yeah, they'd absolutely remembered that those were the types of drinks he liked. Those were the types of soft drinks, mixers, bourbon he liked, and that was in his minibar when he got to the Ritz-Carlton in New York. Now that's a really simple example, and there are many, many, many others. But that is a differentiate. That's an example of a differentiated experience, right?
Yeah.
Now, Ritz-Carlton are not fools. They know that people like me talk about their client experience every day of the week, every day of the year, and there's hundreds of us doing that across the globe, hundreds of CCXPs doing that across the globe. So they know that these differentiated experiences have become common folklore, right? We talk about this regularly, and we talk about Ritz-Carlton delivering this differentiated experience. And there is no business on this planet that cannot deliver a differentiated experience if they choose to.
Yeah.
And I hear all the time when I start to talk to my clients, yeah, we want to stand out. We want client experience to be a unique selling point. Right, okay, that's a great ambition. But what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And I very recently worked on a project down here in Devon with a lovely group of people, a law firm called Wallins. And Wallins I think they've got about 200 people that work for them, three big offices, one in South Devon, one in Exeter, one in North Devon, and they're growing rapidly. And they've done all the right things. They've invested heavily in the workplace for their team. They invest heavily in training and development for their team. They invest heavily in the features and benefits of the roles and the jobs that they have on offer. And this is now transpired into an ambition that they have from an intentional experience they want to give, which is
Yeah.
excellent service every team, every time. That's their mantra, right? Excellent service every team, every time. So when somebody in finance is making a decision about an invoice query, in the back of their mind, they're thinking, okay, hang on, I need to think about how I respond to this with an excellent service every team, every time mantra.
Yeah.
When a paralegal gets an inquiry in and thinks, I need to respond to this and I need to do it reasonably quickly because that's deemed as being excellent service every team, every time. So there's a really clear, defined vision for what the client experience, the client service experience for that law firm looks like. That's a great example of a unique selling point.
Yeah.
What they also do to differentiate that selling point is they have something called a service level guarantee. So they say to their clients, look, if you're not happy with what we've done, invoke the service level guarantee. We'll knock 15% straight off your bill. We want to know why. We want to learn from you why it
Yeah.
wasn't great. But yeah, no quibble. We'll just knock it off. Yeah. So this is another example where you've got businesses that in sectors that historically have delivered very random experiences. The legal sector to this day delivers quite random experiences. There are, there are businesses like Wallins. I've got another one, Stephen Scone, another law firm that we work with locally. They also have, a really clear client pillar. They're really clear in their mind what they want to deliver. I work with a big accountancy firm, Bishop Fleming. Their vision is all about being the most rewarding accountancy firm to work with. So there are lots of touch points, what I call foot on the ball moments, where when we're doing that gap analysis, we ask the question, is this excellent service every team, every time? Does this gap display that? Are you
Yeah.
the most rewarding accountancy practice? Does this gap display that? Are you delivering on your client pillar? Does the gap display this? So, part of our job, if I'm being really candid, is one, to assess random, intentional, differentiated. But secondly, a lot of what we do, Alex, is just about holding the mirror up and going, look, as your critical friend, are you? There's the
Yeah.
mirror. You tell us.
Yeah, well, that makes complete sense. That was actually going to be one of my questions. The Ritz example is really interesting, but how does a service-based business do that, right? Because they're a lot more limited in regards to delivering a differentiated service. So that explanation with the law firm is really interesting.
Why do you think they're limited, Alex? Because that's interesting. It's an interesting question you've raised, and
Yeah.
it's a great question, by the way. Why do you think they're limited to delivering a differentiated experience?
So let's say they're consultancy, right? They're consulting customer service, literally what you guys do. Let's flip it on that aspect. You're delivering a consultancy service, right? You can't just bring in like and ask, okay, what drinks do you like, etc. You can kind of say what kind of service provider you like working with, what type of style you work with, etc. But it's a lot more limited than actually fully tailoring it to that individual. If you want to scale,
Yeah,
how would you manage that?
I think that's a great question. I think service businesses actually have more of an opportunity to differentiate
Okay.
in places like Ritz-Carlton. And the reason they have more opportunity to do that is because, to be blunt, they've got more margin to be able to invest in it. So, a great example, for example, of one of the things that Stephen Scone do, Stephen Scone give each of their people a budget of, it's a small budget, but nevertheless, it's a budget of 25 quid. And they say to their lawyers, we want you to treat your clients by spending that 25 quid on them. Now, that might be at the end of a matter, taking them out for a coffee and cake.
Yeah.
Right? It might be sending them a divorcee a lovely bunch of flowers at the end of it to say thank you for your business. It might be they know that their kids who've just gone through a divorce love Lego because they've listened and they send them a little Lego voucher to say
Yeah.
thank you, right? All of these things, it doesn't have to be ostentatious. It doesn't have to be, what do you want in your minibar? It's about empowering your team. That's what
Yeah.
I mean when I'm talking about differentiation. It doesn't have to cost the earth, but it's about how you interact and not about transacting. That is
Yeah.
the difference. So any business can create a differentiated experience, whether a service provider. So, for example, one of the things we like to do with our clients is I will intently listen to what's important to them. So yesterday, for example, I knew that a client we work with, I knew the managing partner likes tapas. So I took them out for lunch. We went and had tapas. And it was a great lunch. We were there for 2 hours. We talked about the business. We talked about the program for next year. But then, do you know what? We just talked about the family, what we were doing at Christmas, what we like, where they were going on holiday that year. It was just something different other than let's talk about your gap analysis or let's talk about this, something, the other. So, we try to um, ask all the right open questions to get to the nub of what the people in the organizations is important to them. And that's differentiated, right? Uh, when you reached out to me to appear on this podcast, that was a differentiated experience, right? Because you were seeking to understand one, what we could bring to the party in terms of the conversation we had, but you were great in terms of setting the call up. You were great in terms of introducing yourself. I knew what was important to you. You know what was important to me. That's a differentiated experience than just saying to somebody, just can you just come and talk about what you do, right? It's
Yeah.
different. So anybody can give a differentiated experience, but it requires energy and it requires focus.
Yeah. And I guess it's more of the little things you do for an individual that differentiates you as opposed to, okay, let's just be more transactional.
Yeah, and there are two other tips. You just twigged my memory. Um, we often talk to businesses about something called little big things, all right?
Hmm.
Little big things are that it has two meanings. Do the little things that are going to make a difference, like the drop them some flowers when a divorce comes through or whatever it might be. And the other part to little big things is when something goes wrong that you perceive as small, put it right before it becomes a big thing for the client.
Yeah.
Historically, what businesses often get wrong is they overlook the query, the question, the small complaint. They don't read the room. That festers and becomes bigger, and then they then have to get involved later down the line when actually it's a much bigger complaint. Now, if you can head that off early doors, one, the client's going to love you because I think, yes, they're attentive and, they want to listen to me. Secondly, they are going to be much more of an advocate and they're therefore less price sensitive. And thirdly, they're going to think you care just purely and simply because those things are important. So little big things are important. And, having that ability to give yourself the space. Often I'm told I haven't got time for that. Okay, you can't find 15 minutes in your diary. Lawyers will say this to me, well, I can't, I haven't got 15 minutes. Really? In a week? You can't put 5 minutes in your diary, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and pick up the phone and find out how your clients are. Have an ad hoc call with them. Tell them you're not ringing to charge them, you're ringing to see how they are or give them a brief update. Right?
Yeah.
That is differentiated because no other law firm does that. Right?
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. Perfect. And then regarding 2025, what trends are you seeing in regards to customer experience? Is there more demand that you're seeing that's growing for this kind of service?
I'm seeing the good businesses getting better, and I think that will continue into 25. I'm seeing the businesses that want to invest being more successful in 2025 in this type of work. I'm seeing, I mean, the AI conversation has been a live conversation for a little while, and I think there is probably nervousness and skepticism around AI. I see AI as a huge enabler,
Yeah.
particularly around qualitative data. So less quantitative, more qualitative, I think is really helpful. And right, love it or hate it, and people, of course, will have their own personal view of AI, but AI has the amazing power to help your business become more efficient
Yeah.
and listen harder. So I think that will only continue. And I think, we've always had a type of AI, whether that be automation or whether that be um, whatever, skills we've had, Siri, Alexa, whatever it might be, we've always had some kind, certainly in the last few years we've had that. So I definitely don't fear it, and I think there is a huge opportunity to embrace that in 25. But the one key thing I'd advise any business to think about in 2025 is this: who are the customers you want? Who are the customers you want to retain? And what do you need to do to give those people that spend their cold, hard, well-earned, hard-earned cash with you, firstly, an intentional experience, and then a differentiated experience? How do you move from being a random provider of a service or product to one that customers will recommend you? And that starts with really talking to your people and really understanding whether they're up for it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, you took out my last question out my mouth in regards to what's one key message you'd like to leave with our audience. So I'll throw you a curveball to end off the podcast in regards to what's one controversial opinion you have in regards to business growth.
Oh, that is a curveball. That was in the setup, Alex. Um, what's the one curveball I put in? Controversial comment. Don't be an arrogant business. As a C-suite leader, don't think you know it all because you don't. Nobody knows it all. You'll have lots of experiences, you'll have lots of great knowledge, but you'll never know it all. So do something different in 2025, right? Actually speak to your customers. Even if I met a really great guy who we've just started doing some work for, a guy called Kev Sherwood, runs Sherwood's as an FM business down here in the West Country, huge business. Um, Kev's a bit of an inspiration because Kev is the most um, deprecating person I've ever met. He loves his team. He loves his people. He doesn't profess to know everything. He goes out with his engineers and works alongside them. He asks them their opinion. He lets his board make the decisions. He guides and he cajoles. And he said to me when he engaged me, he said, I don't have the skills to do what you're doing. And I said to him, yes, you do. You have the skills because you already recognize that you want to deliver an intentional experience. That's massive. So my controversial comment is be a bit more Kev Sherwood, um, and less arrogant about your business.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Ryan, for being a guest on our growth cast. Where can the audience find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Ryan spelt Rhian, Huxtable, CCXP. If you search me, you'll find me on LinkedIn. You can get me at ryan.huxtable@insight6.com. You can call me on 07810 516 887. And yeah, let's have a chat. If we can help in any way, I have 20 brilliant colleagues that work with me across the UK and Ireland. So if you need help with your gap, understanding your gap, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Amazing. And if you guys have found this conversation in 30 minutes valuable, then I'm sure that one-to-one consultation will be even more valuable with Ryan. So thank you guys for listening today and see you in the next episode.